people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. The itinerary for unified super bantamweight champion Ellie Scotney. Set for Motu, unified title defense. Then, if she makes it through that, unification matches with the two remaining champions at this weight. Jamie Mercado, Nazarena Romero. Ellie Scotney will defend her IBF and WBO super bantamweight titles against New Zealand's own Motu in Manchester on October 26th. The 26-year-old from Crawford won the IBF title from Shernika Johnson in June of 2023, then unified with the WBO champion Sigolene Lefebvre in her last outing. This upcoming fight in October will presumably be Ellie's last fight of this year before attempting to become this division's undisputed champion next year. She's got to get Motu out of the way. And while Ellie is doing this, don't expect the other two champions at this weight to unify with each other. They're not going to. The reason for it is that the Scotney fight likely pays out the best money at super bantamweight. They likely make more money waiting to fight Ellie than fighting each other. Now Scotney will take on her IBF mandatory challenger Motu on home soil after Matchroom won the purse bid for their clash. And Eddie Hearns confirmed to Boxing News that the fight will make up part of the undercard for Jack Catterall's rearranged showdown with Regis Prograis in Manchester's new Co-op Live Arena. The Matchroom boss also suggested that another unification clash could be next should Scotney come through the 19-0 New Zealander Motu, 34 years old. Hearns said, "We won the purse bid and she's going to be on the Catterall Prograis card in Manchester." What do we need to know about Motu? Well, Motu's a tough old bird, is what she is. She's a tough broad. I once saw her fight with a dislocated shoulder and still go on to win the fight. Ellie's got to take care of her. Then, we just want to unify. WBA champion Nazarena Romero has just won. She's a really good fighter. You've got the WBC champion Jamie Mercado, but Ellie just wants to unify and then move up to featherweight ASAP, I think. There's a sense of urgency there. That Ellie's time at super bantamweight may be coming to an end. It may be getting difficult for her to get down there, keep getting down there. She's already been down there a long while, 4 going on 5 years, I think it is. Ellie Scotney debuted as a professional in October of 2020. She's been there for something like 4 or 5 years now, and I'd wager that weight, it can't be getting easier to make. Granted that Ellie Scotney's still young. She's very young. She's only 26. Really is only a matter of time before a fighter outgrows a particular weight. And so she is set to face Motu, 19-0 with 7 KOs. She's got more fights, more rounds in the bank than Ellie Scotney, more knockouts too. I do think she punches harder than Ellie Scotney, punch for punch. I do think that, but that's with the understanding that whatever knockouts she's amassed so far have been against lesser competition, much lesser competition than the girls that Ellie Scotney has been fighting. A quality over quantity kind of argument that got more fights, more knockouts than Ellie, but not against better fighters than the fighters that Ellie Scotney has been fighting. In 9 fights, only 9, she's already faced 2 world champions. Good ones. Very good ones. Where Mia's quality of competition is a bit more pedestrian. Pedestrian compared to Ellie's, that for all these girls that Motu fought, you won't find a Maria Cecilia Roman in there, a Jorgelina Guanini in there. Former champions. You won't find any former or current reigning champions on Motu's resume. So even if she does have a lot of fights and a lot of experience, it's at a certain level. Mia has power and explosiveness. Toughness. We all know how those Maori fighters, they can be tough. They're as tough as they come. So she's got those things working for her, but in terms of finesse, form, all of that goes to Ellie Scotney. Technique, speed. Because while I do think Motu is stronger than Ellie Scotney, punch for punch, has a heavier punch, I think Ellie is faster, noticeably faster. Faster on her feet, with faster hands.
More defensible.
Ellie's punches are shorter and tighter. That makes them more defensible, thus making it harder to catch her in between the punches.
Catford.
She doesn't leave herself at a disadvantage to get off punches. I feel like this is going to be a close quarters fight, a fight that is fought primarily mid-range to inside. In terms of physical dimensions, I feel that Ellie and Mia are quite similar.
Neither one of these two are all that big for 122 pounds. Tail of the tape, their height, their length.
What will determine the contest, I think, is Ellie's accuracy and her speed.
Mia's gonna take chances. She's gonna try for big punches, and Ellie's gonna make her pay for it.
Though Ellie not being a knockout merchant, Ellie Scotney on points seems the likeliest outcome to me.
Catford.
Look for this on the undercard of Catterall versus Prograis. We'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. In men's welterweight news, Terence Crawford has elected to keep his WBA junior middleweight title and vacate his WBA welterweight title. Predictable. Nobody expected him to keep the one he had at 147 because he's not going back down there. He's done at 147. This makes Stanionis the newly crowned WBA welterweight champion. Full champion. Per an official statement from the WBA, Terence Crawford decided to remain as champion in the junior middleweight division of the World Boxing Association and vacated his welterweight title. According to what he formally communicated to the Pioneer organization, the American sent a letter in which he informed his decision to keep the junior middleweight title and vacate the welterweight title, which will leave Lithuanian Stanionis as the only welterweight champion.
So what happens now?
Well, Stanionis is still aligned with the PBC, and so is WBC champion Mario Barrios, though I'm not expecting a unification match between them because Mario's name is attached to a Pacquiao fight, a potential Pacquiao fight in the fall.
So what's Stanionis gonna do?
More stupid interviews to say more stupid things, like what he said yesterday on The Boxing Voice. He's a champion now, but what's that really worth at the PBC? Stanionis said that the dollar amount offered to Brian Norman by Boots for a unification match was not enough money to see the fight done under those circumstances. So what amount of money would it take to get him in the ring?
If 1.7 million is not enough, in his opinion, what is he expecting?
See a lot of people trying to give Jaron Ennis a hard time about this, and they're likely going to give Eddie Hearn a hard time too. Failure to make the unification match happen between Jaron Ennis and Brian Norman.
Even though it's the Brian Norman side that are making things difficult, this is not dissimilar from what we saw years ago with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. Back when Terence was still with Top Rank and Bob Arum, they tried to make it sound like it was somehow Top Rank's fault that the fight didn't happen when it was Errol being difficult. It was Errol saying that Terence was on the wrong side of the street. So when he's saying that, how are you supposed to make a fight with him?
They were being disingenuous and trying to make it seem like it was somehow Top Rank's fault that things didn't happen. They're going to do that now with Eddie Hearn. They're going to do that now with this.
They're going to try to make it seem like somehow it's his fault and not the guys rejecting offers, not the guys turning the fight down. And turning the fight down to do what?
You know what Brian Norman's about to do? He's about to fight Derek Cuevas on Keyshawn Davis's undercard. The question now is, what is Stanionis going to do? Now that he is full WBA champion,
what's he going to do?
Who's he going to fight? I don't think he's going to unify with anybody. I don't think he's going to unify with Brian Norman.
Neither of them want to unify with Boots.
Because they don't like the money. The money he's offering, oddly enough, I don't expect them to offer each other very much either.
Much money.
If what Brian Norman is looking for is in excess of 1.7 million to unify, well, he ain't going to get that from Stanionis.
Stanionis ain't going to get it from him.
Stanionis versus Barrios. Is that a hot ticket? Is that a big fight? Is that a bigger fight than a Boots fight would have been? That if Stanionis is even fortunate enough to get Mario Barrios in the ring, does that pay out more than a Boots fight would have paid out?
Would it?
If he's lucky enough to have that fight, because it's conceivable that this year could come and go without him unifying anything, even with a guy who's on his own side of the street.
It's possible.
See, a lot of people are having fun watching the welterweight division try to freeze Jaron Ennis out with no oversight as to what these champions are going to do, who these champions are going to fight.
No regard.
There's nothing you guys want to say about that. Would you prefer that this division stay divided? Because that's the look of it.
I guess so.
When Brian Norman won't cross over to the matchroom side of things for close to $2 million, what? Do you think the PBC is going to offer him that?
No.
So then what is Top Rank on behalf of Brian Norman going to offer those fighters to come over to their side of things. Are we now expecting Top Rank to pay out the kind of money that Matchroom wouldn't pay out? To bring Mario to their side, to bring a Stanionis to their side, or Jaron Ennis? Are they going to do that?
No.
Then what's going to happen at 147?
Nothing.
A lot of nothing. A lot of filler fights that nobody's excited about, like Norman versus Cuevas, Boots versus Chukadzian 2, whoever
Whatever.
Stanionis ends up fighting, if he even does end up fighting again later on this year, we'll see.
A lot of nothing.
And this is what people are celebrating.
Yeah.
There is a silver lining. There is. That even if a Stanionis is driving just as hard a bargain to unify as Brian Norman, look at who's number one. Look at who his mandatory challenger might end up being. Shakram Gayasov of Uzbekistan.
He's with Matchroom.
Action fighter and a decorated amateur. Unbeaten in the paid ranks. So maybe you can't force a Stanionis to unify with Jaron Ennis or anybody else. Maybe you can't force him to do that.
You can't make one champion fight the other, but champions do have mandatories.
It's looking more and more like Shakram Gayasov is going to be a Stanionis' mandatory. And if an order comes down for Stanionis to fight him, and he keeps driving a hard bargain, it's gonna go to a purse bid.
You keep turning your nose up at Matchroom's office.
Maybe a situation where that fight gets ordered. And if it is ordered, what is the PBC willing to pay out to bring that fight to their side of things? What are they willing to pay out?
Because whatever it is, if Shakram Gayasov doesn't accept it, and a deal is not reached by a proposed deadline, it goes to a purse bid. And at the purse bid, Matchroom can put up some money, PBC can put up some money, and we'll see who the fight is worth more too.
But you might end up going to Matchroom anyway for less money. You may end up going to Matchroom for Shakram Gayasov instead of Jaron Ennis.
It's not exactly a walk in the park either.
The Shakram Gayasov fight? Not really. I imagine that Eddie Hearn is going to start to put some pressure on the WBA now that a Stanionis is full WBA champion. I imagine that Eddie's going to put some pressure on them to order that fight because that's his ticket to get at that belt. And if he can get at that belt,
You can bring it to a Boots fight.
oh, you can't make one champion at welterweight fight the other. You can't force them to do it, but champions do have mandatories, and you can force those fights.
You can press that issue.
The unfortunate political situation in today's welterweight division, historically one of the glamour weights, at least in the past, not so glamorous today. Men's middleweight news. Former Mayweather Promotions CEO Leonard Ellerbe talks up Danny Garcia's Hall of Fame credentials.
Is that what Danny Garcia is going to be when he retires? Has he had a Hall of Fame career?
Leonard Ellerbe, who has been involved with the PBC since its inception, believes that if Danny Garcia defeats current WBA middleweight champion Erislandy Lara, he will secure his place in the Boxing Hall of Fame. During this past Tuesday's media workout, Ellerbe participated in the live stream, previewing the co-feature bout between Lara and Garcia, which takes place on September 14th at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. Ellerbe, who was formerly the CEO of Mayweather Promotions until this past June, has continued to be featured at PBC events, including this media workout. Having watched both fighters evolve over the past decade, Ellerbe expressed high praise of Garcia, asserting that a victory would solidify his legacy in Canastota, New York.
Is that the situation? If Danny beats Lara, does that make him a Hall of Famer?
What it would make him is a 3-division champion, because he was a champion at 140, then 147, and if he moves on from all of that after some time has passed and he beats Lara, he would be a 3-weight champion, though a Hall of Famer?
I don't know.
If Danny can pull it off, I think he goes into the Hall of Fame, Ellerbe said to Cynthia Conte on the PBC live stream. Ellerbe compared Garcia's potential achievement to those of boxing legends Oscar De La Hoya and Miguel Cotto, both of whom held titles at junior welterweight and middleweight. Garcia had an impressive run at junior welterweight,
Yeah, but that was a long time ago.
defeating Amir Khan and Lucas Matisse as an underdog before capturing a title at welterweight. However, he struggled to maintain that success at the top of that division after his loss to Keith Thurman in 2017. he would join elite company, Ellerbe said, if Garcia were to win.
Though not without some angling, there's a reason he's bypassing the much deeper junior middleweight division for the barren wasteland that is the middleweight division.
Lara, at 41 years old, can no longer move as he once did, leading to more action-oriented fights as Lara now sits down on his punches and throws with power. Meanwhile, the 36-year-old Garcia is new to the middleweight division with only one fight at junior middle under his belt. It's going to be a great fight, Ellerbe said. Lara's style now, he sits down more on his punches. He doesn't move a lot. It will be very good. A fan-friendly fight.
There is something about this fight that I don't like or I don't trust.
It's hard to say that beating a 41-year-old Erislandy Lara, a sparsely active and aging fighter, would get Danny into the Hall of Fame given his welterweight run. I mean, for a perspective, Danny hasn't looked impressive since his days at 140.
And he hasn't fought at 140 since the beginning of 2014. That was 10 years ago.
I believe his last fight at the weight was Mauricio Herrera, who a lot of people think beat him. Nevertheless, when you compare his 140-pound run to his welterweight run,
he had two impressive wins as a 140-pounder, but no impressive wins at 147. He lost every time they stepped him up, whether it was Keith Thurman or Sean Porter or Errol Spence.
He lost. He sat there at welterweight for approximately 6 to 7 years, losing every step-up fight they put him in, all before eventually moving up to junior middle for one fight with Jose Benavidez, who he beat on points. He didn't knock him out like Terrence knocked him out.
Subsequently sits out for 2 years, roughly 2 years. It's been 2 years since that fight, since Danny's last fight, and now he's fighting Lara. That doesn't say Hall of Fame to me, even if he wins.
And while it would be the scalp of a reigning champion if he wins, context is key. You're talking about an aging, sparsely active champion. You're talking about a 41-year-old Erislandy Lara. I don't know that beating today's Lara creates a strong enough argument, a strong enough resume that Danny should get into the Hall of Fame for it.
Sorry.
Usyk, that's a Hall of Fame career. Inoue, Crawford, those are Hall of Fame careers.
But Danny?
Like I said, Danny hasn't looked impressive for a decade. It's been about a decade since he was at 140. That was his best weight.
He was bang average at welterweight, did next to nothing at junior middle, and now at middle, while beating Lara.
Would be beating a champion. I don't know that that would make him a Hall of Famer or give him a Hall of Fame resume. I just don't see it. And this entire conversation exists in a realm where we entertain Danny winning the fight. But who says he wins the fight?
What if he doesn't?
And he's not a 3-weight champion as it stands. He has been a champion at 2 weights, but there are a lot of 2-weight champions. I mean, Paul Butler was a 2-weight champion.
Ricky Burns was a 2-weight champion.
Zerto Ramirez here today is a 2-weight champion. Would you say that they have Hall of Fame resumes?
Does Danny? Does he really?
For doing what? For beating Amir Khan and Lucas Matisse? That makes you a Hall of Famer? It's been well over 10 years since those fights. Should we have to go back in time, that far back in time, for Danny to look impressive? Because if we have to, then he's clearly not a Hall of Famer.
I'm going to apologize for that.